Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tish Millsap, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at DotNetNuke Corporation. I'm very happy to be the host of today's web seminar. Thank you all so much for attending. Our topic is Building Mobile Websites with DotNetNuke. And our guest speaker this morning is Bruce Chapman from Eyefinity Software. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take care of some housekeeping things real quickly. All right, then. And if anytime you have any questions, please feel free to use your GoToWebinar software to ask a question right away. There'll be time at the end of the seminar for questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Bruce is going to try and respond to as many as he can during the time allotted, but if we don't get to all of them, we will try to respond to you within a couple of days. So before we get started with Bruce, I wanted to give you some information about DotNetNuke. Most of you are likely familiar with us, but others of you not. There are hundreds of people on the line this morning. So DotNetNuke, we're a software company. We have a web content management system with a bunch of additional capabilities. One common theme we come across with customers is the problem of business agility. By that, I mean they struggle with doing things faster, doing them more efficiently, as well as affordably, and scaling their business in an environment of unpredictable change. Think back to the year 2000 and what the internet was like then. At that time, the web was very static, but as you know, in the last 10 years, things have changed dramatically. But who really could have predicted the change and growth in social interactions? Who should have known how absolutely critical mobile devices would become in delivering content? And fundamentally, how we use websites has changed from just a source of information to a place of meaningful interaction anywhere, anytime around the globe. So what we encourage our customers and prospects to think about is making the right platform decision that allows you to adapt quickly to unpredictable change on the web. And with DotNetNuke, our customers can adapt quickly and take advantage of new opportunities for their online presence. A little bit about the company. We're the world's #1 web content management system in the Microsoft ecosystem. We are just about to tick over 2,000 commercial customers. As many of you know, we started an open source project in 2002. We are by far the largest and most successful open source project in Microsoft history. And over the years, we've had over 7 million downloads of our software. Finally, last but not least, we have a very large and strong community of folks that contribute to the open source project and have a depth of knowledge about .NET and they actively contribute in continuing that project. Finally, I just wanted to let you know that there are 3 different editions of .NET, the Community Edition, the Professional Edition, and the Enterprise Edition, and I encourage you to go to our website and learn more about our products. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to Bruce. Bruce, we're going to pass the presentation to you, and
Sure.
You can take it away.
I will be with you. Yes, I'm with you. I'm just... Okay. Is that okay now?
Yes, you are ready to go.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. The presentation I'm going to do today is building a mobile application for DotNetNuke. The idea with this is to show you how to build a mobile app and how to hook this into your DotNetNuke installation. This is a rerun of a presentation I did at the recent DotNetNuke World Conference. So the brief agenda here, we're really covering 3 topics. An introduction to mobile applications in DotNetNuke, how to build the service layer in your DotNetNuke installation to interact with mobile devices. And they're going to run through an example mobile application that's been written. It's an open source one that you can look at the code for, and it's called DNN Dash, which allows you to see the dashboard from your DotNetNuke installation. So just briefly covering mobile applications, what I'm talking about here is a purpose-built device-specific applications such as a Windows Phone application, an Apple iOS application, or an Android application. There's a movement for HTML5 on mobile platforms. It can provide a rich experience and it has much better cross-device capabilities, but it can't match purpose-built at this point. And this topic of whether you should go HTML5 versus a native application is a hot topic of debate at the moment, so we'll just cover that a little. HTML5 comes with the benefit of writing it once, running anywhere on the platforms because it comes on a standard platform of HTML5. You can easily change and redeploy your application, but it does come a problem with its sandbox, so you may not be able to access many of the features of the device that you're using. That might be a GPS or a camera. It's much more difficult to get your App Store presence, and the speed of the devices depend on the connection. And it also makes direct monetization more difficult, because with a native app, you're building an app per platform. This does take longer, but it gives you better access and a better fit for the device. It does require a lengthy release process, particularly in the case of Apple and even in the case of Microsoft, but it does give you full access to all of the features of the device. You can also use in-device discovery and purchase for further monetization, and they're usually faster and more stable. And the big example of that is the recent move by Facebook to switch from HTML5 back to a native application. However, you can create a combination of both, so you might have a native application that hosts HTML5 content. So the conclusion I want to just draw from that is you should really choose according to the requirements, and your requirements are the business purpose of the application, what platforms you're targeting, and really just whether or not what's the best fit for what you want to achieve. The core takeaway for that is that when we're building a mobile application to interact with the DotNetNuke website, the services layer that you build will probably be the same in either case. So previously with .NETNuke you could build mobile applications, but it was quite difficult because you had to create all of their own service endpoints in order to get the data from the your .NETNuke installation out to your device. So with .NETNuke 6.2 there was a services layer introduced which exposes key API features and does it in a way that allows you to rapidly build new applications. And .NETNuke 7, which will be coming out very soon, has redefined this services layer to bring it in line with new Microsoft Web API services. And this hasn't really changed the way that you work, but there's a few little differences which I can cover. So the services layer really makes it easy to extend the .NETNuke platform onto other devices. And because of this, a whole new field of .NETNuke activity and applications has been created. And what I really would like to do out of today is convince some people to dive into that and start extending .NETNuke into different areas. So I'm just going to cover a couple of those things that you might want to build extending .NETNuke. So you could build a corporate application, maybe for an in-house, maybe if you have a lot of remote workers and there's a particular business function you want to push out to them. Or you might be into commercial development and provide new applications. And for many applications now, particularly if they have a social aspect, you're still going to need a website that's on the back end of that, and the .NETNuke platform is ideal for that. And of course there's open source development, so you can be building mobile applications in open source and allowing people to download them, install them, and help contribute to the project. And if you have an interest in this but don't actually have something to build, building yourself an open source application is a great way to get into it. So I just want to cover off now the way I see things going, and just showed that diagram earlier that showed what's going to be like in 2020. I think it's pretty clear to everyone that you're going to end up with a lot of devices interacting with cloud services, and by cloud services I mean things that are remote from the device that you're using. And so you're going to be interacting with data from a number of different devices, but it's going to be the same set of data. And the mobile device brings with it very good user interaction. It's always on, it's always with you. And then it coupled up with cloud type services, which is it's always stored well, it's always backed up. You can outsource more CPU intensive processing, and also you can use the cloud to authenticate the users to make sure you're only giving sensitive information to the people who are allowed to see it. So just coming back along from that down to a more technical level, what I'm going to show you today is a mobile application, and I'm going to show you how that interacts with DotNetNuke through the services layer. And this diagram follows on from the other one because I see the DotNetNuke as acting as a cloud, DotNetNuke installation acting as a cloud. I mean, it may well be that DotNetNuke is hosted on the cloud, but even if you think of it as a private cloud if in a corporate situation. So to cover the DotNetNuke services layer, so 6.2 release of DotNetNuke, which came out earlier in the year, that used the MVC services layer. And as I already mentioned, 7.0, which comes out very soon, has changed to using the web API for the services layer. There are a few differences, but on the whole, they're very much the same. However, I would recommend that people, if they're going to be developing, to target the new 7.0 services layer. So there's two aspects to the services layer. There's the built-in DNN API, which allows you to access core features such as authentication, and then there's extending the service layer for third-party modules. So the authentication is based on DotNetNuke user accounts, so that if a person has an account created on a DotNetNuke website, then they automatically have the ability to log in through an application. And the idea of the DotNetNuke services layer is it provides a simple way to create new service endpoints without having to go through a lot of code. And I'm going to show how easy that is. It also gives you a flexibility in format, so you can decide what's best for your particular needs. So the two basic components are a controller, and what the controller does is defines the particular endpoints that you want to expose your business functionality, and it inherits from a specific DNN controller, which is part of the 7.0 namespaces. And the route mapper, which really defines what URL your controller methods map to. So I've just got a little snippet of code here, which is very, very simple service layer call. You can see I've built three different methods there, and one is ping, one is ping admin, one is ping host. And the reason I've done this is just to show the different ways of having authentication. So the first one gives you anonymous access to a service. The second one, you must be a member of the administrator's user group. And the third one's a built-in authentication there that says require host, and it says ping host. So to call each one of those, you have to have the appropriate authentication level. And from this ping method we got, I will show you the URL that you would need to call, and that is the domain name, desktop modules, DNN dash, which is the name of the module, API, which is a fixed term, dash, which specifies a controller, and then ping, which is the method that you see at the top there. So just to pull that URL back apart again, we can see the domain name, which I mentioned. So the desktop modules, anyone who's familiar with .NET module development would recognize that as the path that a custom module is installed in when you install it into an instance of .NET Nuke. But in this case, it really is used to identify the module. It doesn't actually have to exist as a path. DNN dash specifies which module that is. API is fixed, as already mentioned, and the dash part of the URL, it actually specifies the controller in the code that you will be using. And in this case, it's because the URL contains dash, it's going to be looking for the dash controller. And ping is the method name that I already showed. So the route mapper here, this is how you register a URL route. And in this case, you can see we've got the DNN dash simple dashboard. And then that's going to call a controller in the namespace of DNN simple dashboard.services. So that will work out the mapping between the actual controller and the method that you're going to call. Now it's important to realize at this point there's no other configuration you need to do. You just build this, drop it into your website, and it's ready to go. So I'm just going to demonstrate that now. So what I have here is the code that I just showed. We can see we have a ping administrator, and a ping host. And I've just got this method here which I'm going to uncomment. If I can find my uncomment button. And I'm going to do a quick build of this application. And that's copied it into my beta layer for me, my beta website. And now I'm going to go to Fiddler, and I'm composed up a small request here, and you see we've got our domain was a portal alias, which is localhost DNN 7 beta, desktop modules, DNN dash simple dashboard, and a hello world call, which we see was here that we just created. So now if I call that, it's quickly going to go. It's just got to wait for the site to load because we put a new application. The application restart was triggered. And we can see that if we look at the result there, it's a JSON result that said message hello webinar attendees, portal ID 0, username is null. And the username is null because it was an anonymous call. So the point I'd like to just show here is that with the new web API layer, there's automatic content negotiation. So if we change the type to application XML and then request that, we get the response back, and we can see that it's now changed into an XML response. So that's part of the advantages of using the DotNetNuke 7 services layer. I'll just go back to the presentation there. So to authenticate the services, I've already shown that you have to mark it with either the static role or a particular role in your site. And the authentication will identify and authorize the user, prevents unauthorized access, and it helps you avoid opening up exploitable holes. Not only that, it provides context within your call so that if you have a user that you need to load a specific piece of information for, which most of the time is going to be the case, then it's going to give you the information on which portal they're using and which user ID is currently accessing the service. So web browser-based service calls use the ASP.NET cookie-based authentication, and if you're familiar with .NET Nuke 6.2 or 7, you will see that with the social code, a lot of that uses a rich services layer to present, and that all uses the cookie-based authentication. However, with mobile devices, it uses digest authentication to provide that authentication, and what you have to do there is provide a username password pair with each call. And with the digest authentication, it will automatically encrypt the username and password with a one-time nonce, so that you can't sniff the password even though you're essentially providing it to the call in clear text, but the digest authentication does not transmit a clear text password over the wire. So you mark each method with the authentication level it needs, and .NET Nuke services layer is going to check to make sure that they're currently the user that's currently using the service has the correct authentication, and if it's not, it's going to not work. It will not run the service call. So once you've got that and you're authenticated, you've got all your regular DNN objects that you would be used to, such as the portal settings and the user info. So how to write the services, there's a few tips I've got here. You can use a RESTful method and parameter naming principles. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but that's what I would recommend, just to keep it nice and simple. Stick to a common return format in your projects. So as you saw with the content negotiation, we can easily flip between JSON and XML, but I recommend sticking with one and using it. And you should be planning for infrequent calls. And on a mobile application, bandwidth is at a premium, connections may not always be on, so you want to be frugal in the way that you how many times you call and how much data is going backwards and forwards. You may have to create custom objects to serialize. A lot of the .NET Nuke objects are very heavy in terms of having a lot of properties, so you don't want to be passing those backwards and forwards necessarily. You may have to create a custom one. So how do you install services? You just install it with your module, and this particular example I have is a single it's just a single DLL that drops in. There's no user interface. You can do it with an ordinary module install package if you're used to that, which means using the manifest file. And I'll just show you a manifest file here for that one I'm going to demonstrate. You can see there's a couple of things that are important. One is that we've got the core version dependency there, so that you cannot install it on a version of .NET Nuke that doesn't support this. But then you just have to drop the assembly into the path, and that should have been displayed earlier when all I did to create my new method was do a simple build, and it drops it into the bin directory, and then it's ready to go. So now I'm going to cover off the example that I've written for this presentation. It's called DNN Dash, and it reads the installed DotNetNuke dashboard components for display on mobile devices. It uses the service layer to send back some XML of dashboard information, and it requires host level access. You can see the link there, which shows you where you can get the source code from. So how we do that from Windows Phone, we use the system.net web request. We have to call it with Windows Phone. You have to use an asynchronous method to call the services, and I recommend checking the status code of each one to drive how your phone application interacts. And so, as I mentioned before, if you're not authenticated properly, you will get a 401 return by the services layer. So you can intercept those status codes and work out what to do from that. So each call from the application provides the username password pair, as I showed that you would need to do. And the XML from the service is used to create the UI within the application itself. So this is an important point, to try and be flexible in the way that your application interacts with the data. And if you can at all make it more dynamic, then it's easier to push changes to your device without having to re-release a new device application. So I'm going to just run through the demo. If you have an Android phone, you can follow that link at the top there, which will, you can load it up on your Android phone. You can search for DNN Dash on the Google Store to find it. The Windows Phone application for this presentation is still in approval process, but we should have it on the store soon. And you can connect to dnndash.com using the username and password of mobile demo DNN 2012. So I'm just going to demonstrate the application there on the Windows Phone. So this is what the first page of the application looks like, and you can see I've already entered my username and password and the domain of dnndash.com, and I'm going to show here, if we click this test connection button, it's going to hit that service and do a check for the anonymous connection and then an authenticated check of the host. And now that we've done that, we will go straight into the application itself. And you can see here that we have the portal, the dashboard settings. And if we look at our particular dashboard that I'm using on DNN Dash here, this is the information that we're pulling back from the DotNetNuke site back to the device. So we've got web server, host, social dashboard, the portals, the installed modules, and the installed skins. And if we look back at our phone now, we can see we've got something has gone slightly wrong there. The demo gods have stopped it from working properly. That's the installed skins. We shouldn't be seeing dash settings there. I'll just refresh that. There we go, that's better. So we've got web server, host, social, and you can see the information that is the same as the application in the background there. I've also put this favorite button on here, which is an example to show how to push data back to the server. These are some screenshots of the Android version. I appreciate that the user interface is not the most compelling, but it was put together to show how to do it, or best practice on UI design. If there's any designers out there, I'm quite happy for you to get involved in the open source project. So we showed you before authenticating using the dashboard application. So the username and password is supplied with every single call, and that's done by storing the username and password in the memory of the phone in the application settings, and then using that to call every time. And remember, that is digest authentication, so it isn't being passed as plain text over the wire. And here you can see a snippet of code from inside the phone application, and it creates a new web request and then sets the credentials, and you can see this app settings credentials, which is a custom application settings that were created for the application, and you're just passing in the username and password and then returning the request. That's simply how it works. And you can see here, this is a screenshot from Fiddler where I've sniffed the request going out to the server, and as you can see, there is no plain text username or password in there, but you can see what the username is. And you can see the nonce there, which is the one-time encryption. So to get the data from the service, you have to use asynchronous web request. Response is read from the response stream, and once it's received, it's conversion to the response format. So the example that I've already shown you uses the XML and JSON responses, but I would recommend sticking to a single type of format for your application. And here's another example of that asynchronous, the way to call the services layer asynchronously. So you will start the asynchronous response, set up the response stream, and then look for the status code. And you can see there I'm checking to see the HTTP status code is OK, which is the 200 status code. And if that's the case, then reading the XML from the response stream and populating the controls of the application. So that's all there really is to pulling back the services layer. The populate controls there is the UI code that will take the data and populate that pivot control that we saw in the Windows Phone application. So posting the data to the service is much the same as retrieving the data. You are going to create a response, and then instead of, you will still create the request and receive the response asynchronously, but along with the request you're going to add in the data that you want to send up to the server. And in the Windows Phone application example there, we have the favorites information, so you can favorite a particular tab and send it up to the server. You should use post methods only for changing the server state, so only when you want to push something and save it onto the server. And you should make the posts idempotent. So idempotent, if you're not familiar with the term, means that you can send the same response twice to the server and it will still work okay. Now, we've all seen the case where you might buy something on an e-commerce website and it comes up with a big warning saying don't click refresh or we'll charge your credit card twice. That's an example of a method that is not idempotent. So ideally, if you had something, it wouldn't matter how many times you requested it, you'd only ever change the state once. So more like the lift button where you can press it many times, but the lift's only going to turn up the once. And any failure on sending back the information, you should be able to resubmit it without losing your client state. And by that I mean, if you've got something, say an application where you're sending a status update for a social application or something similar, then if that post doesn't work, you should be able to resubmit that post if the network connection fails without the user having to re-enter the information. So considerations for your mobile application design. Just remember that if you're going to put an application in the Apple store or the Windows store, that there are lead times for changes in design. So if you make a mistake or you want to react quickly to the market, then you're going to have a lead time there which is difficult to manage. And in that respect, I recommend that you have certain elements of your UI design which are perhaps controlled by server code. So in this application, the example application of the DNN Dash, the actual display of all of the controls is managed by the format of the XML. So if we installed a new application, a new dashboard into our .NetNuke instance, it will automatically show up on the DNN Dash phone. So that if say .NetNuke included a new dashboard control in a future release, you wouldn't have to re-release the phone in order to show that. So by introducing flexibility with data-driven design, you can sidestep the requirements to re-release the mobile clients. And that might also work if you're trying to monetize an application. You might be able to add new monetization opportunities within the application without having to re-release. So the conclusions from our presentation are that what you should be looking at is Mobile internet usage will soon overtake fixed line internet usage, probably sometime this year or next year. Everyone needs to be looking at this as part of delivering services. Hardware sales growth for mobile devices outstrips desktop computing, and you've got to look at things like the Microsoft Surface, which has just recently come out, and there's a good chance it's going to cannibalize a lot of traditional type of laptop sales as people make do with just a simple device like that. And into this new market, DotNetNuke provides the perfect bridge because the devices are proliferating, and if you want to keep your data, it needs to be synchronized between regular computers and mobile devices. And DotNetNuke is now cloud capable on Microsoft Azure, so you can have the perfect situation where your data is stored off on the cloud and your interactions both through websites and through mobile devices. The thing I want to push here is that building services layer is very simple and very fast. Anyone who has built anything in DotNetNuke will find the services layer probably one of the easiest things to pick up and learn. So mobile apps are going to be the next big thing in DotNetNuke. So it's time for the questions now. Just while that goes on, you can look at the information there on where to get the code, source code and installs for the application that I've displayed, and you can get the slides from my SlideShare site. Follow me on Twitter there. I also believe that Tish will be saying where the slides are available from the DotNetNuke point of view.
Yes, those will be available on our website in about 36 hours. And everyone who registered will get a follow-up email from us, which will have a link to those slides online. And basically, it's a replay, so they'll be able to listen to it again as well.
Okay,
so you want to go ahead and start addressing the questions?
Yes. Do you have one there that you've picked out already that you would like me to ask?
Yes. Tell me about your thoughts on the DNN social and mobile apps.
In terms of, I guess the question is there a launched application for social applications on DNN? Do you think that's the question?
I think that is the question. I think maybe it's somebody who attended DNN World who's interested in your thoughts about the direction that we're taking with social, with 6.2.
Well, yeah, from my understanding that social is going to be very much a part of DotNetNuke going forwards. Mobile apps, by their very nature, lend themselves to social usage, so I see a big opportunity there for people to build social applications, whether it's for an internal type company use or whether it's to try and monetize it yourself. And you know, this stuff's vitally important for everyone, really, DotNetNuke Corporation and the module ecosystem.
Great. Some couple of specific questions you might get. What about iOS?
Yes, so iOS, there's absolutely no problem with building iOS applications to work with .NET because the content that you're going backwards and forwards is format neutral. It's just sent in plain HTTP. I don't have an example iOS code for you. The reason for that is just lack of time and resources. I haven't done any iOS development myself, so I just haven't put that in. But there is absolutely no reason that you can't follow the principles in both the Windows Phone and Android application that are available in the source code to use the same principles to develop an iOS app. Gotcha.
And something kind of, oh, wait a minute, the question's just moved. Okay. Do you have an example of using the service via HTML5?
Sorry, I do not at this point.
Okay. And then, let's see. Oh, this is a can of worms, so we'll see if we want to open this up. Why not just have a responsive design in your DNN site?
Okay, sure. So the answer is it depends on what you're trying to do. Responsive design in your DNN site is something that's very important, obviously, so that if your actual website is being viewed by someone on a mobile device, that the website design will adapt to that device. So if it's a tablet, it's going to adapt to that. If it's an iPhone, it's going to adapt to that. However, this really depends on the nature of your application. So I like to use the Strava app to monitor how much exercise I'm doing, and there's two aspects to that. One is the application that you use in order to track when you're riding your bike or going for a run, and that uses directly the device's capabilities of the GPS and that to record it, but also you're using when you finish doing your exercise, you upload the data to the Strava website. You can go onto that website and use the more social features of the website, add comments to your information that you've just done. So really, by having, you wouldn't be able to achieve that easily by having a simple responsive design. So there's very much a place for responsive design. It's something that everyone should be looking at, but really what I want to emphasize here is building mobile applications that are going to open up new opportunities in a way that just having a website cannot do.
Gotcha. So I just wanted to note some people on the call, because Bruce isn't part of DotNetNuke Corporation, some of the questions are about our specific roadmap. So I'm going to take those offline and have people from our product organization answer those about the direction of the architecture that we're taking, the ways we're changing the service layer, things like that. But sure. I do want to encourage you to ask questions specifically about mobile that Bruce could answer. Here's an interesting question. What needs to be advanced in DN7 to make building mobile apps smarter and easier? What are we missing? Anything that you want to see, Bruce?
No, I think, well, okay. So I see a question there which is also what are the actual APIs that we can use? So I'll kind of answer those two in one. There's probably some more APIs that can be exposed in the native services layer, probably around users and probably some of the social features, and that will help. But on the other hand, I would expect that you want to design your own service endpoint to suit your particular application so there's a quite close coupling, and perhaps if you're relying on too many DNN APIs, there's always the possibility that they may change in behavior in a future version, although we don't, as developers, most people wouldn't want that to happen. We have to be realistic in that sometimes things do change, so you don't want your device breaking because the services changed when you upgraded your .NET Nuke website. So, you know, I think I'm just trying to get my words together here. For me, as a module developer, I went down the path of trying to build REST services layer and expose these features myself many times in the past. Always came up against a roadblock or a brick wall that I couldn't get past, and so I never actually got anything released. But for the people on the .NET Nuke team who have developed this, they've really thought it through, and you know, I see that the opportunities are there just to extend it and build it yourself. So I don't think there's a lot missing from it. Probably there needs to be more content like this presentation and others for examples for people to copy. So that I would like to see that coming out more. I also see a question here: why you're changing the service layer architecture in DNN7 from MVC based? I can answer that one.
Go for it.
I can't answer that one officially, but I have spoken to, during the process of building these applications, Scott S., who's part of the DNN team. We've been exchanging emails, and it's a question that comes up. It's a question that came up at DNN World, and the answer is Microsoft themselves changed the way they were doing. So they put a lot of work into the MVC services layer and the MVC product, but they have decided, Microsoft themselves have decided to concentrate on this web API platform, and it's built on top of the MVC services layer, but it is slightly different, improved in a few things like that automatic content negotiation I showed before is a real win. So the reason that DotNetNuke has changed, even though it's a painful change to sort of introduce a breaking change, as it were, this early in the piece, it's really setting up the platform for the future, and it's something that I agree with. And I just suggest to people that unless they've already built an application, they need to be targeting DNN 7 and Web API, because that's the future of the way Microsoft is going. And I think DotNetNuke is going to follow along in that path.
Great.
So,
all right. Do you want to answer one more question?
Sure. I can see here someone's posted, can DNN6.x be hosted in Amazon Cloud? And the answer is yes, it can. I did a presentation a few years ago showing how you can host DotNetNuke in the Amazon, I can't remember which particular service it was, but yes, it is possible to do. The second part of that question is, when will a non-beta version of DNN 7 be available and hostable in the Amazon cloud? I can't answer that, but I do know that it was announced at .NET World that the Azure Cloud Services trials, I think, are coming up pretty soon.
Well, I can answer the 7.0 will be released on November 14th. I encourage everybody who's on the line to sign up for the release webinar that's going to happen a week from today. We'll have Sean Walker on the phone, and he will be talking about all the new features in 7.0. And I believe we were just moments away from having the release candidate ready, so we should be releasing either on the 13th or the 14th. I believe it will officially be on the 14th.
Well, that sounds good. And I would just, from my point of view, I'd really encourage people to take a good look at DotNetNuke 7. I think it's a big change. I mean, it's a great platform. It's very stable, from what I have found. I think we've moved away from the days where you wouldn't touch a .0 release from DotNetNuke. And you know, I've been testing on it for a while, and I found it to be really good, and something that's definitely a positive step forward. And when the DNN Dash application that I have for this, sorry, the DNN Dash website was built in 6.2, and already when I look at it, I think I must upgrade that to 7 as soon as possible.
Well, thanks for that flattering comment. We're all here very excited about 7.0 and its release, and just in terms of the usability and productivity that we can offer to developers, as well as the power of the platform, it's going to be very exciting. So with that, I want to wrap up and thank everybody today for their participation, and especially thank Bruce for presenting today. We really appreciate it, and we hope to work with you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.